initially, it's important for me to have you use a pure color on a clean screen in order to recognize any kind of technical problem in your printing that I can help you solve. All of you are going to print, and the pressure of your hand holding it in place is going to be different. So the method of screen printing, basically we have the stencil now, and the stencil gets placed, the screen gets placed. This is a little test cloth. It's probably going to pop up because there's not a pin on it, Lizzie. Is there?
No, there's not a pin.
And the squeegee is the next item. The squeegee has to be match the size of the image.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a bigger squeegee that was too wide, it wouldn't work. So choosing the right size squeegee for the image that you're printing is important, and I'll help you do that. There's a variety in the studio. So first I'm going to use my test cloth right over here. And I have bubblegum, pistachio, and blueberry are great. What color should I start with?
Pistachio.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I'm going to put the pigment down right above where the image is.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you should just see what I'm doing.
Just gonna put numerous ones on, I guess.
Random printing basically means I'm doing a repeat, but it's scattered on the cloth. So the squeegee in hand, if you're left-handed, whatever. But the difference between this and a screen printing, a serigraphy class, is that the screen, the substrate or the paper or the fabric in this case is stationary, and the screen moves around it. If you've ever taken a printmaking class, the screen is stationary and the paper moves. So that's one of the main differences. So you have to learn to hold down your screen, so it doesn't move, and then do the print. Fabric is different because it absorbs pigment, and in absorbing the pigment,
So
it
that was like
absorbs
6 runs of the squeegee.
and it's 6 runs of the squeegee because it's the first time it's being printed.
Okay.
If once I'm on the fabric, and most cotton, I should be able to print. I like 4, maybe 5 times to be sure. But things can go wrong like this. If you're not close enough, you should see this. That's like a dry run. It didn't hit all of the areas. Not enough pigment on my blade. So let's just gather it up. When I'm printing, I'm going to print a few, and then I'm going to talk about, notice my hand, the angle of the squeegee, the placement of the hand, and notice how I lift up the screen, almost like a hinge. This is random. If you start smack in the center, you're going to not have as many prints on. Do as many prints on the fabric with this stencil and color the first time. Because again, you're learning, and I want it to just kind of feel like it's floating on the fabric.
So can you cover what you've just printed on with your screen, or you have to?
You're on
You want to
Miss it.
miss it.
Yeah.
And initially, if you're learning, I'm counting to myself how many times I want to across the image, because it will make for a really consistent printing. The pigment was mixed really thoroughly. That's why we spent time mixing pigment, to make sure there's no streaking in here. So I'm starting kind of at one side and I'm moving across the fabric. If I start in the center, because of the size of the screen, I'm not going to get many prints in. So part of the movement I'm making here is being dictated where I can go. The angle of the squeegee is also important. It should be basically at a 60-degree angle. So this is 90, this is 45, and halfway between there is 60. If you go too low, this is the most common problem. I can usually recognize that because usually the pigment starts climbing up the squeegee. If it gets to your arm, we know that it's a serious trouble. save all the excess pigment off the screen and there. Then I would take my screen out to the trough, spray it out really well. Take the plastic, no, don't take this plastic off, leave it on. When I rinse this off,
You don't wanna scrub it on that side.
you don't want to scrub it on this side, but these might flap open, these little points. They'll come back in place when it dries. I'm gonna scrub this side though with a little bit of Comet.
So you're gonna use that image again with
Again.
a different color? You just did that one.
I did.
That's okay, one of the things that you've seen in some of the sample textiles around the room that have been printed is a way to establish a spatial illusion. And you can do that by, we have the print going, you've seen how it develops, you've seen some transparency in the overlaps. Now I've cut a piece from that initial pistachio color shape. I cut it out. I'm struggling to get it off. There we go. And now I'm going to take this on a dry surface and place it. And you can be a little bit more careful perhaps with more time spent doing it. That's in place. This is going to be able to be reused. So once Lizzie prints, I wouldn't print completely over it, let part of it come off the surface, off the edge. And now we're going to print right over it, and there's going to be a feeling of forward and backward, of stacking and layering. Not the transparent type that you see in some of these, but you'll now recognize it in some of these prints here.
I'm doing more because I was kind of walking around with my screen.
And it was a little dry, she waited a while, so she did a few extra passes of the squeegee. Now, the ideal thing is to wait till it dries instead of getting over anxious, but we're too excited. We want applause on this one.
So that makes it look opaque
It does,
without having
yes.
to.
So if you know the tips and the tricks to using resist along with the printing, then you can get this really incredible feeling of forward and backward. We can also do the same with the purple shape. We can cover that, and then we can come back with this shape in our pistachio or our bubble gum color, and everything's really going to start looking forward and backwards. We could also keep this covered, let this dry, cover this, print something, and it'll look like it's going behind both of them. So there's a number of things you can do with the contact paper besides making a stencil. It's an important part of your materials that you brought from home, and you're going to use it in many different ways.